Hey, are you a business owner, entrepreneur, or professional? If so, we want you to apply to be a featured guest on our show. My name is Adam Torres, and I host the Mission Matters series of podcasts. I've recorded over 3,000 episodes, and we are just getting started. How do you know if you'd be a good guest to be on the show? Well, only one way to find out, and that's to apply, but I'm going to let you in on a little secret. We want guests that have a story to tell, guests with a brand, a product, or a service that can benefit my audience of listeners. If this sounds like you, go to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to apply. I'd love to talk to you and get to know more about your story. Again, head on over to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to apply. All right, now let's get into the show.
Thanks everyone for joining us for another weekly Clubhouse experience with Mission Matters. We are, in short, a multimedia platform focused on the needs of entrepreneurs, business owners, executives. What we essentially do is showcase their story, and we want to share and amplify other people's stories and help them get their voice out there to inspire and educate future generations or other entrepreneurs and executives that are in the trenches currently. And the way that we do this is through our podcast and through our books. We've released over 3,500 podcast episodes since we launched several years ago. And we published over 150 authors now in various different types of books. We're constantly creating content out there, and we have amazing entrepreneurs. We have amazing lessons and stories that we've been able to share and learn from a lot of our folks. With that, we constantly want to inspire, and we want to keep finding more entrepreneurs and executives that we can share these stories.
So we want to bring on the specialists, our expert panelists here who are involved in that, many of whom serve on boards. Many of them are very active, have been doing this for many years, and have companies that specialize in all of this. So before I steal anyone's thunder, I'm going to pass the time here to Adam to coordinate introductions and get started here. So feel free to take the reins.
All right, Chirag, thank you. And excited to have everyone on. And as I was talking in the kind of pre-show, this is exciting because I think Martin and a lot of other guests have a lot to offer on these subjects. Rita and a lot of work in these areas. And maybe just to get us kicked off, as Chirag mentioned, let's just do some intros. So if we want to just maybe start top left, Martin, if you can give it your intro.
Sounds good. I'm Mark Ravinsky, CEO at Boardside, and I was part of a book, and the chapter that I wrote actually is about building a powerful, diverse board, and that's what Boardside does. Not only does Boardside focus on diversity, we overall help companies build board of advisors and board of directors, anything from adding a board member to building them from ground up. So,
awesome. And we want to just head on over to the right. Rita?
Hey everyone. The first women business book with Adam, and my chapter was diversity, differences, and decency. So I'm a diversity, inclusion, and career strategist, and I help a company called Uma, which focuses on diversity and inclusion at the forefront of what companies do from a strategic perspective and individuals as well. So we work really on building confidence as being sort of that golden nugget, that missing ingredient from a lot of the equations here. So that's really, in a nutshell, what I do. I also host a TV show called The Uma Show, which is about empowering and bringing up the voices of South Asian women role models in society.
Awesome. Thank you, Rita. And moving right along, if you go down to Jan.
My name is Jose Manuel de Jesus. I'm a journalist and a publicist by trade profession. We had the motivation and the how can I say, impetus to diversify. And actually, it's funny that I should be on this call because I turned down there were two organizations that asked me to be on their board, and I kind of had to say no. I got too much going on. Honestly, it just wasn't the right offer, relationship. There are a lot of things that go on that you have to be kind of impartial about. I'm sure Martin will speak to this far better than I will. And having been on boards and in boards before, and I remember once I had an interview by board, and my first day was an interview. I was interviewed by 20 board members at the same time. That was really interesting. But I learned so much about boards, and I hope to learn some more tonight. So anyway, that's my story. I write about PR. I write about telling your story. So I hope you guys will enjoy my chapter in my book.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And Elizabeth, welcome.
Hello, good evening, everybody. So I'm Elizabeth Yo, and I was a part of the first volume of Business Leaders Edition. My chapter was chapter 6, A Woman Veteran from Exit to Entrepreneur. And now I am in the change management space where we design strategies to attract, interview, hire, place, train, and retain women veterans at every level within an organization. And our primary focus is building alliances and partnerships with vetted companies and organizations that provide these opportunities or resources, services, and products that actually enhance and sustain the lives of women veterans and also the communities that they live in and serve. So I'm really happy to be here tonight, and it's an honor, as always, with Chirag. So thank you.
All right, Elizabeth, now's a good time. Tell me about that Facebook post. I have to get this out of my system right now because I was like, what? Chirag sent it to me, and I'm like, come on. So how'd this come about?
It's so funny because I got the FedEx, like, when Chirag was texting me, every time he texts me, something happens. So keep those texts coming, Chirag. So anyway, yeah, I got this FedEx that I did not know why, but like I said in my opening right now, my primary focus is partnering and aligning with real vetted organizations that I've vetted or have been vetted by other professionals that are working with them. And so in that, one of the organizations that I represent and work with through community engagement is the Mission Continues. That is a veteran military-focused organization. It's a nonprofit that actually connects veterans and military personnel to community leaders, community partners that they have throughout the country. And one of the partners ended up being this year Archwell Foundation. And so because of some work that a lot of work that I actually do in the community, not just with TMC, but out in the things that I am now doing in my company to support the women veteran demographic, they, I guess, proposed me as one of the recipients to receive an honorable mention and recognition from Terry, the Duke of Sussex. So I received a personalized letter recognizing my service, recognizing me as a woman, as a leader, and also recognizing the community service that I do in and throughout Los Angeles County and beyond. So I was really humbled. I was shocked, honestly. I couldn't believe it. And I held the letter up to the light, like, wait, or somebody, like, your junk mail is like, yeah, you want $1 million. So yeah, I thought, oh nice, it's real. But then it did come in the FedEx, so it was all starting to make sense. So he mentioned that the TNC, the Mission Continues, had referred me as a veteran they thought should be recognized, and I'm still just kind of blown away. So thanks for letting me share that.
Oh man, I'll take it didn't have to be a real signature for me. I want a Prince Harry signature on the letterhead. I don't even care. It doesn't have to. I'm not gonna hold it up. I don't care.
Thank you, everybody. Yeah, it's a humbling experience. Like, how often does that happen in anybody's life? You know what I mean?
Well, I like to say that's awesome. I'm excited about it. And let's get Chirag going in here. Come on, Chirag. Great to see you.
Hey, everybody. Good to see you, Adam. Good to see you,
I
Chirag.
saw your recent Instagram post, by the way, too, of that video, and it just makes me smile every time. I'm like, come on, Chirag, hit him with another video.
I appreciate it, Adam. Hi, everybody. My name is Chirag. I'm an attorney based out of Los Angeles, California. My office represents businesses and personal injury clients. And part of my practice on the business litigation side, business representation side, is assisting clients, particularly with disputes that arise with either shareholders or amongst the board of directors. And so they come to me for insights and for resolving disputes. So I'm happy to be here. Thank you guys so much.
Awesome. So just format of this, of course, is I have some questions laid out, but of course, this is really meant to be just an organic conversation, more like a fireside chat versus an interview style format. But I think a good place, and I'll just throw this one out there for everyone, is to kind of lay the groundwork is like, what's the purpose before we get into the idea of building a powerful, inclusive, and diverse board? Like, what's the purpose of just building a board in general? I don't want to assume that everybody knows that, number one. So maybe that'll lay the groundwork. What's the purpose of a board? Whoever wants to take that one, go for it.
I'll jump in real quick. First of all, I was saving to say congrats to Elizabeth. I was talking and everybody was muted. So congrats. I would actually love to hear Chirag's point of view. I wasn't aware exactly what he did. Knowing now what he does, I would like to hear his opinion on this personally.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. So, my take on a board of directors is essentially a group of advisors to help ensure that a company continues to grow, meets its targets, and can resolve issues, amongst the various. Human nature is such that people can disagree. But the idea of it is let's come up with the best solution that moves this company forward. If people disagree, let's find a way that the vision is still aligned and everybody can move forward on the path. And ideally, you want to be able to resolve disputes quickly and efficiently, because otherwise, it slows down the business, it hampers the business, it slows growth, and ultimately that leads down into the revenue and the numbers. So it's incredibly important that you have a diverse board where you have different viewpoints from people from different backgrounds who can offer insights that, just from their unique upbringings, but then still have a way that everybody comes together for a unified vision and mission for the future.
Exactly. It almost sounded like you read my chapter. But yeah, that's absolutely right. Of course, there are two types of boards. You have board of directors, different responsibilities than a board of advisors. Or you can hire board of advisors that are experts in certain categories, and they can be handpicked by the CEO and the management team versus board of directors. So there is obviously some difference there. And just like I wrote in my chapter, I think there is a lot of positive that comes from diversity. I think it's needed. And obviously all the talk that we're experiencing in the last 3 years about board diversity obviously stems a lot from the government. There are now 14 states from California all the way through New York, DC, Hawaii, that mandate that the public company has to have a diverse member of the board. And what's next, in case Chirag knows about what's coming next, is there is a NASDAQ board diversity proposal that came out, I believe, towards the end of 2020. The proposed rules require that all NASDAQ listed companies either have 2 years after SEC approval. So now it's not just a state thing, but obviously NASDAQ is getting involved in this, pushing diversity as well. So with that, I can continue, or somebody else wants to pick up.
Yeah, no, I love it. I just wanted to add, so I sit on a few boards myself, so within the US, either on executive boards or on advisory boards, as Martin mentioned. In the UK, I sit on a couple of NEDs, which is non-executive diversity, non-executive director, so that's like the third level. In India, a couple of companies I help there, there's a fourth layer, and that's also dependent upon whether it's a non-profit or a for-profit company and how that for-profit structure as well. So I think it really depends, but most of the experiences is how do you shape the culture of the organization. So depending on the level that you're at, or if it's a brand new company setting from scratch, or it's an established organization, it could be, okay, you're shaping the culture from the start. It could even be at the level of they haven't even hired a full exec team yet. The C-suite isn't even fully staffed yet. Or it could be that everyone's fully staffed, but there are issues going on, nobody's talking to each other. What can we do from the grassroots levels up? What can we do to hire new talent? So I think a lot of it is just really shaping the culture that you ultimately want to see, and you can reimagine the vision of the company as well. So I think that's the unique place that anyone at that level can contribute to. So I think it's absolutely essential. The wider the net, the wider the talent, the more representative it is of the communities that these companies serve, the better it is ultimately for the client base anyway that the company serves.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's great. And I'm sure we all agree here. And that brings up a lot of good points, as diversity can create conflicts, obviously, people coming from different places. And this is, for me, diversity, race, or gender. I mean, there's age diversity, which is a generational diversity. Everybody from a different generation comes with a different aspect of what they've grown up with. I think keeping in mind that diversity can bring different ideas is very important, and obviously that can really spark a fire in the company. Most important thing I think that to keep in mind is that all board members should know and believe and always stand behind company values, mission, and vision. And I think if all members of the board, whether as board of advisors or board of directors know the values, mission, and vision, and believe in that and stand behind it, then doesn't matter what, what the diversity level, what kind of what it engages as far as different thinking, they can always land back onto progressing the company in the right direction.
I think, Martin, I mean, that's a big point that you make about NASDAQ. And I mean, that's a lot of companies. So I mean, over 3,000 companies, I don't know, 3,000, 4,000 companies listed. And let's just say that happens, then, there's going to be a lot more board opportunities just available there. Talk to us, whoever wants to chime in on this one. Rita, I know you mentioned you've been on a lot. You currently sit on multiple boards on both, domestic and internationally. Like, talk about the process of becoming a board member, and maybe for those who have that experience and some of the reasons why somebody would consider that.
Before Rita jumps into it, and I think she can really bring a lot of value on both sides, board of advisors and board of directors. And on top of that, a female, I would love to hear that. But before she jumps in on it, that also brings up a really important piece to this, because obviously there's a lot of companies out there, and some people don't agree with the fact that this diversity is being pushed onto companies. The main reason that they don't agree with that is they feel like companies are just going to be putting on a board member just to check the box, which we all know that's not a good way to run a company, especially from a board level, because if you're not putting somebody on the board that brings value, not only is it a bad thing, but it can be very cancerous to the entire board, which obviously, whichever way you look at it, whether that trickles down. I thought let's look at a board as a foundation for the company versus some people say it's, it's the top of the chain, but it just checking the box is just not good enough. And companies need to take their time, because there are many qualified, diverse board members available to sit on these seats, and companies can gain a lot of value from that. So I think just checking the box is definitely the wrong way to go.
Yeah, totally agree. And I think that's a lot of that ideology definitely comes out of ignorance. It's just so assumptive that somebody would think that somebody would just want to check a box when it comes to their company. Like that's not going to happen. Like, there's so much talent out there. So circling back to the idea again, becoming a board member, or why someone would want to become a board member, whoever wants to chime in on that one.
One of the primary rationale for a board is keep everybody honest, and to make sure that pure objectives and the pure achieve, keep that in mind by not necessarily getting involved in the company. I think there was a principle I remember from one board training that involved the knife movement. You guys probably know this very well. The knife approach, being a board member with your nose in and your fingers out. You don't participate in the general business, the day-to-day business, but you do pretty much steer the company, and again, keep executives honest. So just a quick tidbit that I'd like to add there.
For me, it's been my experience that I have been asked, and also been asked more so than inquiring, but because there's no diversity of thought on the board usually. A lot of times the boards that I've seen, witnessed, and have come into as a new addition usually have a lot of the same thought patterns, people of the same breed, almost sitting at the table. So there's not going to be any diversity of thought going on there. Everybody's of like minds, the like things are going to keep taking place. So I like what you said, that at least NASDAQ is like, we need one diverse director, let's have a, which is still troubling for me. So just to have a diverse member on the board is still not really diversifying that board. And so for me, I'm always going to come from the veteran perspective, because nobody usually thinks about the veteran at the table like that. But because, honestly, the military has the largest, most diverse group in the United States of America. And a lot of their military members, the veterans, have global experience, international experience, a lot of things that people out of universities usually cannot bring to the table all at once, right? So for me, there's no, for example, like educational type boards. If you don't have a parent on that board, how are you really diversifying and understanding that demographic that you're serving? Because it comes right back to the families. Or if you don't have a veteran on that board, or somebody in that space, how can we possibly understand that demographic, right? So for me, it's always about diversifying the thought process, how people think. It's not just about race, like earlier. It's not just race. It's not just a female or male, or not either, not female or female. It's more than that. It's how people think. And so the mindset really plays a huge role. And a lot of people don't think outside the box. A lot of like-minded people sitting at the table. So that's kind of where my experience has been. And playing the parent on the educational boards has been absolutely phenomenal and has made some great strides, at least in and throughout our charter school community. So it's detrimental if you don't. And having one diverse member at the table is hardly diversity.
Yeah, I agree. I was the one that mentioned that earlier, and you're absolutely right. If you have a room full of Ivy League graduates, they're all pretty much going to bring the same concept. If you have people that have grown up the same way, their thinking is going to be the same. That's why you need diversity at all levels. Like I said, and like you mentioned, beyond gender and race, you need diversity age level. You need diversity of people coming from different countries, being raised differently, struggling in different ways than others have, and some maybe that haven't struggled. So it is very important, and it brings a lot of value. And I think and truly believe that private companies who don't obviously legally have to have a diverse board. I mean, every private company we talk to, we push to build a diverse board all the way around, and especially if their exit plan is to go public, because once they build an advisory board, and let's just say, that they work with these advisors for X amount of years, 2 to 3 years, it builds a pool of people that, if they've connected with them, they enjoy working with them, those are perfect people to move from an advisor role into a director role. And then obviously you've already been working with them. You already know what the value that they bring. They already know the values and the mission and the vision of the company. And it makes it a seamless effort to move them into that position. And then all of a sudden you have a diversified board of directors that obviously will qualify you. And like you said, hopefully more than one, because having one is not diversity, just like having an entire board built of a woman, that's not a diverse board. It's a woman board of directors, and you're still going to have that other side of thinking. So diversity exists at all levels, and it shouldn't be overdone. I mean, it should be very implemented.
Totally agree with everything everyone said. I think one thing I'd add is that if I am considering being on a board, quite easily the same thing, it's usually somebody from a nominating committee. It could be that's reaching out to say, hey, we're looking to expand the board in X, Y, Z areas, or there could be somebody and they're trying to fill that, and it seems that, you're kind of coming up the ranks or whatever, and you've had experience in a certain area. But for me, the ultimate decider is, what does the company stand for? What does it look like? What difference can I make? I like to think of myself as a change maker, not just somebody to sit there as the quote unquote diversity woman hire to go and check people's boxes, but what difference can I actually make to this company, to this organization, to this institute, no matter where in the world it is. So that's the first thing I consider. And the second thing that other people might consider is that some boards, depending on the type of board, it might pay you, and others don't. And if it's a non-profit board in the US, you might have to pay them to be part of it. It's different. So it really depends on how much good you want to do in the world. And there's different ways of thinking about it. In other countries, that's not necessarily the way. Some non-profits don't pay the board member to be on. So it really depends. Are you doing this for a financial incentive? Are you looking to retire at some point and you have a wealth of knowledge and you want typically quarterly meetings and step in and you do your bit? You might want to sit in a few subcommittees as well to really kind of keep the reins on a particular topic and do that and sit there earning a little bit of a sometimes very nice healthy paycheck that comes in. You want to go on there and increase what's on your CV right now. So it really depends. There's so many kind of ways and reasons why people might want to accept and can go out. There are different institutions out there that to help actually fit, like Martin's organization, for example, that would help fit somebody that would have an interest in this. And then you just put yourself out there and you say, this is what you've done, these are the kind of what you could bring to the marketplace and why it would help So that's sort of just a couple of bits of personal experience there.
One big thing that is nice to look at if you're building your board and if you're going to approach a board to want to inquire about becoming a part of that board is to really come in with some metrics and some data, because, for example, women veterans are the fastest growing population in the U.S. right now. We represent 17% of post 911 veterans, and it's growing. So there's a demographic that's growing that you might want to start considering to have members on your board, or other demographics that might be a fast growing population, right? So millennials or those that might be turning in their 30s or 40s now. So maybe this group might be having some other experiences that you'd like to bring to the board to have some diversity in thought, right? So again, what's growing, what are the metrics? What's happening? Because a lot of people pull from, like you said, well, we went to LMU together and he's an LMU alma mater, so we'll just keep pulling people on the board that graduated from LMU. You know what I'm saying? There's not going to have any diversity. It might be different people, but like you said earlier, Martin, it's going to be kind of the same thought process, the same experience, so the same kind of general direction maybe going. But yeah, looking at the populations that are coming up right now, everybody's aging every day, one day at a time, right? So you want to look at what's out here and what are these populations that are booming and growing, and who's making some huge strides out here regardless of their background. Because you never know what kind of gem is hidden in the rough, right?
Absolutely.
Oh, sorry, Martin.
No, go ahead.
I'm just going to quickly chime in and say one thing I always ask the question is how many neurodiverse individuals are on the board too? Because I always find as well that a lot of people, as you point earlier, Martin and Elizabeth, really look for that ones that check the general diversity boxes, that, whether it's gender, whether it's identity, whether it's race, background, but how many people look at the neurodiverse individuals out there? Somebody that might have something like, a dyslexic background going on, or has been diagnosed with something that other people would absolutely not look at. Thoughts they can actually bring, the way they think, you cannot beat. So that's something that I certainly ask. Like, who are the other board members? Who else is on the table? Who else are you considering? Where have you gone to consider them? To really find out as well the why.
And are they really listening to the board members? A lot of people build a board to say they have a board and then take no instruction, no advice, don't talk to the board members, don't want to hear from them either. They still want to do things that they want to do and not even pay attention to the board that they chose.
Absolutely. So the other question I asked as well is, like, can I meet with a couple of board members? And I'm thinking it's ask them like a Q&A, like, hey, how are you finding it? What's going on? What's going on the surface? And to really, really get the nitty-gritty of the reason for this and what changes really needed. Because quite often, to your point, if they've always been in the same institutional environment, they can't see it quite often. Even if they come from a diverse background, even if they've been in the system, it's almost like anytime you come in as that new fly on the wall, you can see things differently. So it's almost like coming in and being that fly on the wall almost, being that guest at the board meeting to say, can I just come in as a guest just to observe and see what's going on?
Absolutely. I mean, one of the things that we do, we always assess overall board diversity, and this happens at every company level that we talk to, which I'll give you a quick case study. I'm not going to name the company, but we're working with a publicly traded company that, we all know that there are terms for every board member. Obviously, they're not always exercised. Companies get comfortable, board members get comfortable, and they come diluted, or just they don't really bring any value anymore, but yet they sit on the board, whether it's because of who they know or how they were brought on. We're working with a company right now that's half of the board is basically getting rotated out, and the only reason they're doing that finally is they have been in a space where they haven't had much competition in the public sector. There's been some small private companies trying to compete with them, but they're the giant, and they haven't really been pushed in any way. And all of a sudden, not only did their fourth quarter didn't come in as it should have, two private companies became public or in direct competition with them, and they're just crashing the numbers. So obviously, the biggest shareholder of that company basically came in and said, that's it. It's time for diversity. It's time to rotate this board out. We need to make a difference, or else, things are not looking good for the future. So it's, again, sad to see that something like that can happen, that a company can just sit there and not think ahead of these things. But that's the board's responsibility. They should have seen this coming, and if they haven't acted, then this company definitely needs to obviously change out its board members.
Let's talk about, size of companies. So I think, Martin, you mentioned this earlier about you work with private companies that maybe don't have a board and are considering that. Like, what's the right size of company? Like, because we also have a large startup audience. So maybe there aren't like mature companies. They're not, they have revenue. They're growing. They're on the right path. Like, when should a company start considering creating a board?
So my answer always is the sooner the better. And I know, a startup can be one person, or a startup can be, 5 people that have been bootstrapping the company, and maybe they've been doing this for a couple of years. We've worked with, I literally can tell you, we've worked with all sizes. And as far as having a board on the private sector, the board mainly consists of obviously co-founders, if there is co-founders, or if it's just one founder, then he's the main board member, obviously, at that point. But building a board of advisors, we recommend doing as soon as possible. And you can build that board, with just equity. If you're not financially able to pay for the board members, you can bring equity value to the board member as an advisor. But the sooner you do that, the better, because, we did this for one company just recently, and he's been struggling, he's been growing, and mainly, his product is delivered on Amazon or direct to consumer. And he finally reached out to us. He's been working with us for a few months. We finally recruited 2 board members for him. And just within 2 months of recruiting that, they brought in so much value of things that he didn't even think about originally, which were making connections, and decent individuals have these connections, but making connections to large companies, hotel chains, for example, and cruise lines that these advisors were involved in. And all of a sudden, we're again talking to him because now he needs another advisor, because he can't deliver the product. He doesn't have logistics figured out. So we're actually bringing on the logistics advisor for him now. But this was a way for him to basically obviously gain business, and he went from doing a couple $100,000 in a year to, in 2021, most likely being a multi-million-dollar company just with the connections we created for him, as long as he can obviously deliver the product. So you really got to think about, one of the things is like, if you're an owner and you got 100% ownership of the company, do you want to own 100% of 100,000? Or would you rather own 80% of 100 million? The math is obviously easy to do there, but you can really speed up the process and the growth of your business really fast, and sometimes bring ideas from these advisors that you might have not even thought about. I know I'm getting a little bit off topic of diversity, but that includes different ideas, different concepts. They might see something that you just didn't see it. You're so overwhelmed in your business.
Martin, so powerful is one of the words there, and we definitely want to keep going. And I think you brought up a really good point about the equity part, because I've seen a lot of different setups for boards. I've even heard of people like doing like phantom equity and revenue shares and like all these other kind of different things. But the end result of like having the correct people on the board and like bringing the right people online, just like some of the things you said, like that's a great success story. And I think that's something that, some of the people maybe listening to this later on the podcast or otherwise would want to consider. Is like, is it the creating a board going to do maybe some things like you mentioned for them and their business versus the opposite of that, which is just operating potentially slower growth, and just kind of trying to figure it out yourself, which isn't always an easy thing to do. And I feel like it's possible, like many businesses fail ultimately because they don't get that knowledge or they don't get that extra help when it may have been a great idea, great concept, but they just didn't have those things. Like you just said, logistics, could, if this gentleman that you, or woman that you mentioned didn't get that help on logistics, then, a business could fail, can't deliver the product, right? Even though they had, finally, after all that work, it's like, finally, like we're taking off, and then boom, still fail.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's all the little pieces really add up, and you're right. When it comes to board of advisors, you can structure that in so many different ways, and you just got to find, the right advisor. And most of them are not greedy. They're not Shark Tank style advisors where they just want 25+% of your company. These are reasonable, successful executives that want to do good. And And obviously, if they get any kind of percentage, they're motivated. They're going to be motivated to grow. It's not that difficult for them to connect the dots. So I would say, again, the sooner that people are open to building their board, the better.
Let's talk about like meeting frequency or just the dynamics of what it looks like to be a board member. Again, just for that education piece of this for people that haven't gone down that route. And like, what does that look like? What kind of setups has everyone seen?
It depends on the focus of the board. So, every board has their goal and mission and purpose. So for me, in my experience, being on educational boards, for school boards, for school system is a lot differently structured than you would do for a nonprofit that might be dedicated to the homeless veteran community, or a nonprofit that helps, foster kids or something to that effect. So for me, it's a structure, and it's, I think, the same basic one. Obviously, Martin can speak to that, but my experience is that it's a lot more intense. It's a lot more structured for sure, and a lot more frequency because of varying issues that come up out of nowhere, depending on the environment that you're in. So in the school system, you have things that can come up out of nowhere, and small things to really large, impactful things. So you might have to have emergency meetings. You might have to have more than just a monthly meeting. You might have to have a sit down with the legal team, because you might have, a legal case that we might have to take on or deal with. So the frequency has been varied in my experience. Like I said, maybe some others have more experience than they can share, but it just depends on the focus of the organization, I think. But yeah, that's been my 2 cents about it.
Yeah, sorry, Rita, did you want to jump in?
Oh, no, go for it. I'll jump in on this.
Okay. Yeah, so again, here's as far as the board of advisors, you have flexibility when you're proposing, whether it's equity, whether it's monetary pay, whether it's a mixture of the two. You also have the flexibility of putting in expectations, one of it being time, the other ones could be, if you're bringing on that that's supposed to help you raise funds, then you can also build something for that as far as equity for whatever amount they bring. But when it comes to time, you can build that into that. And then the board of directors, they're a lot more structured. You're looking on average 200, 250 hours in a year if you're a member at board of directors. There's a lot more structure to that, but I think as an advisory board member, you definitely, when you give them the contract, you definitely have more flexibility to come up with something that works for you. Me personally, I'm an advisor on 2 different companies, and totally different. One of them might be quarterly, and I'm also available for if something pops up, which it does, but not that often. And the other one, we have a monthly meeting, and also emails and questions, or before the CEO pulls the trigger on something, you might shoot an email to me and a couple of other advisors to get some feedback. But once a month meeting, from 1 hour to 2 hours, and then on top of that, a few things I got to do, whether it's networking connections or whatnot, which is a couple more hours. So there's, as an advisor, you definitely put in less time to support the directors member.
Yeah, I would say, to back that up, it really depends on what it is. For example, on the education front, in the US, I'm on the board of trustees for a school here. And in the UK, I'm on the local governing body of 2 schools. And those, I have to say, is a lot more time intensive, because that is on the local governing body. So it's not determined by a private institution. It's not even state run. It's done by a certain body, kind of Department of Education there. It's very red tape, it's very bureaucratic. You have to have certifications which are constantly updated. You have to go to certain sort of trainings, like safeguarding training, child training, all sorts of different things. And you have to turn up to hearings. So there could be grievance hearing or unfair dismissal, whatever it is. It could be a diversity hearing, and this could be playing out as the Old Bailey. You just don't know, and your time, it's almost like jury duty. Here, for example, think of it there, and that's part of what you signed up for. And you don't always know exactly what it is until you're doing it, because you can't tell what's going to happen, or if there's been an unfair dismissal or whatever. So it really depends on what it is. And I think if you are that board member, whatever the capacity is, you have to have that level of commitment. And you need to be all in. I have seen other board members, some are very engaged, others are just there because. And And people feel it, people see it. But we need to give back. People are really invested in that. Otherwise, it doesn't work out for anybody.
That's really helpful, and I think that gives people an idea that listen to this just of time commitments and if they're going down that road. And let's talk about the money side of things. I mean, it can be that, depending on the company, depending on things like that. I'm not asking you what you personally made. I'm just saying in general, how does that range work? And I know, again, it could vary greatly, but again, just to put a little bit of meat on this topic of the potential opportunity, because I think, sometimes people also don't consider this wealth of knowledge, this experience they have, these other things, and then the potential earning potential for others.
I can jump in again. Yeah, as an advisor, and if you have equity, any monetary value, then obviously you're building a company, and depending on what level they're at, whether they're earning, whether they're just starting to earn money, depending on their financial status, I think a lot of times advisors will probably look at that as an opportunity for possible exit. And then, if it's equity only, then obviously you're cashing out at that point. So it could be a long-term investment of your time. Me personally, I also do it not just for monetary or for the money end result, but I enjoy creativity, I enjoy being active. Like Rita said, there are different types of advisors where some just sit there and not give any input, and some get really involved and roll up their sleeves, which would be me. Sometimes a little too involved, but it's, I get a lot of joy out of that. It just feels good giving back. As a board of directors member, I'm sure Rita can cover that as well. On average, you're probably looking at monetary wise $48,000, as much as $290,000 a year. You're sitting on the right company, public board, a huge company. So they get other, obviously they get stock, they get other preferred perks as well, and expenses paid. So there is definitely, again, to back up what Rita said, don't just sit on the board, be active and make a difference.
And I think, just in terms of the monetary value, I think if you are considering this, it's not about thinking about, oh yes, that's the amount I'm getting paid. Think of it more, this is a job you're doing. This is something you're doing. Think of it as if you're getting compensation for your time. And if you were a salaried employee at that business, so they're treating you like that. So that's one way of equating what you're getting back in terms of what you put in as well. So I think, it really depends on the size of the company, how well they're doing as well, especially if they're public. But yeah, it could be literally sky's the limit depending on who they are and your lived experience as well. So, and then the other side as well, on the non-profit side, especially here, it could be that you have to put in something as well. So that really is dependent on you. I'm thinking, okay, I'm at the stage now where I can give back, and there might be a certain community or a certain charity that you really feel strongly about, that you help anyway in fundraising for, and for you, this is an extension of what you're doing, which is getting a bit more vested interest in helping giving back. So it really depends on you as an individual and what you're looking for. If this is something you're looking for to really help you financially, or if this is something that you can afford to be on doing a startup, like Martin mentioned, and you might just get some equity further down the line. But that's really on you and what it is that you're trying to give back and help with as well, and what change you can make.
Honestly, if it's not financial, like I said, the equity can be priceless, and my letter from Concierge is that. So I have not, I'm looking to switch over into that space where I start becoming paid and having some stipends come in now. But I think because I've just been doing this just from a selfless, heart, this is who I am. What I wanted to do is just be a time in my community and do what I could. And then without looking for it, I got this, letter of recognition, which now can really propel me in hopefully being able to determine what my stipend actually is. So, sometimes, it seems like, well, maybe I should just be doing it and making sure that I have a stipend, you need money, or you're in a position that's where you are. But a lot of times it can pay off royally, literally, if you give it some time and just let that equity build up. So I just want to give a shout out to the non-equity, it really does work. And when I got this letter the other day, it kind of solidified, this really paid off. So kudos to all of you. I'm so glad to hear how it does work, because I'm ready to enter into that space where I am able to demand, some type of a stipend for my time and also for my expertise.
Yeah, Elizabeth, you bring up a great point. I should have hit on that as well. You do build out your resume, obviously, the more you get involved in. And a lot of times, we, even outside of the border work, if you're an entrepreneur, you might have a business that failed. You put in 3 years of work, and all of a sudden, you maybe met a few people. And this is another reason why I encourage building a board, simply for the networking factor, is if you did, and if the business did fail, who did you meet, and how can you turn that around? And all of a sudden, all that time you invested in a business that failed, and then you start up another business, and all of a sudden that business just skyrockets because of the network connections that you make, because of all that hard work you put in 3 years or 4 years into a business that didn't go anywhere, but all of a sudden you're reaping the benefits of that at a whole different place. And that's being a board member at any level, whether it's directors or advisors. You're going to meet other board members. You're going to meet CEOs. You're going to get connected. You're enriching your network. And as a business owner, why you should build a board is for that same reason. You're enriching your network of people you know and reaching out further into their network, being introduced. And that's just part of growth.
That's great, Martin. And I think that's a great way to end it. I would like to do a solid hour here, keep people on time. If anybody has any closing remarks, I'll be quiet for a second. If there's anything else somebody wanted to get out.
I just wanted to say thank you to everyone. Thank you, Martin and Chirag. Thank you for your contribution to the conversation today, because I really did learn a lot. And also you, Rita, thank you for your contribution to the conversation, because it's been absolutely phenomenal and helped me give me some direction on how to start my board. I'm a one-man shop right now, and I'm looking to grow at least to one more this year. And now I know I'm not it's never too early to start the board. So thank you so much to all of you for your participation and contribution. Thank you, Adam and Chirag, for always coming through.
Yeah, just a quick question. If I doesn't really like that chapter, so thanks for that. I think you should write a whole book about seven boards, etc. So I wanted to know, what would be your best way in like a sales organization? Or if I was to consult salespeople, how can I set up their boards as someone who can help them in sales, etc. Hope that makes sense.
Yeah, I think I understand what you're saying. So you're in sales, I'm guessing.
Yeah, and I've worked with some of the best salespeople in the world, so that's why I'm looking to, maybe send a board of a couple of companies.
Yeah, for me, the sales is always the toughest one, because a lot of the times when companies come to us, they're looking for something very specific, but sales comes out the least. But actually, I can think of 2 companies right now that really need to revamp. They spun their wheels on marketing, but they haven't really figured out their sales. So if you are the type of salesperson that's very, very creative, where you come in more than just writing a sales pitch or a sales script, but you can actually write it or figure out the process of the sale and come up with something different that they haven't tried, there's definitely a position available for you. But in all honesty, that one's probably comes out the least. A lot of companies are looking for structure, like logistics, like I mentioned, a lot of marketing, a lot of financial, a lot of legal. But sales is a very specific position that a lot of time they might already, one of the founders might be holding that position. But again, the company is struggling with exactly that. So if you want to hit me up on LinkedIn, find me.
Yeah, no worries. That'd be great. Thanks a lot.
All right, let's call it. I don't know if Chirag's still there. Thank you. All right. Chirag, wake up. Come on. You sit on like freaking a million boards in your day. I cannot believe he didn't chime in. He's been so... I'm not letting them cut this out, just so you know. Julius or whoever's editing this on our team, do not cut this out. I know. I'm like, how did Chirag not jump in on any of this? Are you kidding me, Chirag? This is your topic.
There's a lot of experts here. I mean, I agree with literally everything that everyone said here, and to add on to it and to give you real life actually examples. So I actually serve on 3 different alumni boards at my alma mater, USC, and I serve on a few nonprofit boards, a few board of directors.
Oh, nice you to join us, Chirag. I appreciate that. So you have, oh, how nice. Oh, you have something to say now. Thank you. Oh.
The one thing I was trying to add though, to provide real life. So like when I ended up, like one of the first startups that I actually got involved in, we ended up running an audit by the year, like end year, to see all the major clients that we brought in. It turned out that 2/3 of our clients came directly from 2 different boards that I was involved in at USC. Literally 2/3 of our revenue was strictly generated from either direct connections of other board members, or it was connections that I made through the board members from events or different things like that. So it does provide a lot of huge networking effect and value. And to put that into perspective, in fact, some of the board members are actually authors of ours in our network, and some of them have even sponsored our events and done everything just to support what Adam and I have put together. So there's an ongoing network effect and ripple effect that takes place even beyond what you're doing from one industry to even moving to a whole nother venture down the road. So and it sticks with you forever. Some of the friends that you make on those boards, like I'm still in touch with many of them, even though I stepped off the board at USC. Or some of those alumni programs, I'm still very actively in touch with many of them, and I keep a pulse on what's going on. And especially with some of the different initiatives that we're looking to run here very soon, I think it propels you forward because you get a lot of folks who have high level positions, whether at their respective companies or know directly. They're like one connection away from someone that you need to talk to. So it does help you, even if it's a volunteer position, 100%. It provides you insight on how to even run and manage companies well.
All right, wonderful. And thank you for being our closer on that one, Chirag. Appreciate it. And to everyone else, again, thank you for showing up. We will be here next week. We'll have another topic. It'll be announced in the newsletter, of course. And if you're one of our authors, then of course you'll get that email from Chirag. If you're not signed up for our newsletter, then just go to missionmatters.com and click on that newsletter, sign up, and you'll get the updates and the topics every week. Awesome.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.